You open Minecraft and you spend hours building the best house you can, focusing on every detail, and in the end, it looks like this. Let's fix that. I'm going to show you 10 of the most common building mistakes I see beginner builders make when trying to build houses in Minecraft. Whether you're new to building or you've been building for years, there's hopefully at least one tip in this video you'll find useful, so with that out of the way, let's get right into it. The first and one of the biggest mistakes you can make when building a house is to have no depth. Now in this house, you can see we have the frame, we have the wall, and we have the roof block. So a palette of 3 blocks, and there's no depth to kind of differentiate them and separate them in the build. So we'll see the frame and the wall are completely flat and the roof has no overhang. Now obviously at a distance, this looks terrible, all right? And I'm sure you can kind of tell without me explaining why it looks terrible. So when there's no depth, you basically lose out on any detail that you could kind of get from a 3-dimensional space. So we can't curve the frame here. The wall itself obviously looks flat, whether you texture it or not. So we have the comparison house over here, and yeah, it just looks way better. The depth makes it so, of course, you could use kind of spruce stairs and trapdoors or whatever stair and trapdoor you want to kind of add a bit of shape to the frame, make the shape just way more interesting. And this is basically the same house. There's not a whole lot different in these builds. It's just one of them I pushed the blocks back in the wall and I brought the roof out a block, which actually lets 2 blocks of space up here, which is pretty cool. But yeah, this also lets you add more details to the bottom. So down here, we of course have a flower pot, which is, you know, kind of a classic. You can get more windows in. You can do this on, of course, every side here. And it just makes it so you could have way more details in a smaller build. I mean, just look at the comparison between these 2 builds. It's kind of a no-brainer. Next up for common mistake number 2, we have the complete lack of shape from a house. This is basically just when you build a rectangle. Now here we have basically the same house from over there. I did a different palette for it because I thought, you know, a lighter one would just kind of mix it up a bit. But as you can see, it is a rectangle, and no matter what amount of details you add to it, it's still a rectangle. You know what I mean? So it looks decent, but as you can see here, by just literally adding a small part to the right and a small part to the left, we made this house way more interesting to look at. You know, now there's a bit of height variation in the roofs. There's like kind of connecting parts here. There's more space for detail. And again, just adding a bit of shape to it will make the house way more interesting. You could obviously take this to the extreme and make some kind of crazy shaped house or whatever. Again, this is literally just this house again, but like on the side, you know? It's not like it's super complicated, but yeah, just a little bit of shape goes a long way. Build mistake number 3 is a huge one. This is honestly just an instant deal breaker for a house, and that is essentially using almost all the same block throughout the house. So we have 3 different examples here. First, we got the oak plank house. You'll be surprised how many builds you see that just use one type of wood for 99% of the house, and it will look bad even if you use a nice looking block like brick. I really like the brick texture. I think it looks really good in the house, but of course, when you build the whole thing out of it, you basically have 0 contrast in the build, and it ends up just looking really flat. And this even extends to texturing that one block palette you choose. So this house is still basically all just stone. I did texture it, but of course, texturing is not going to save the fact that I used all the same block basically, because this completely just eliminates contrast from the build. So as you can see over here, we have a more proper house, and we have, I guess, kind of like 4 different main colors. We have spruce wood and the plank, which are different shades of brown, and then we have gray and we have red. So you can see just by mixing these 4 colors around, of course with texturing blocks and that kind of thing, it just leads to a lot more interesting and kind of diverse looking house. It doesn't all blend together in one as something over here would do. Always make sure to use a bunch of different colors in the build just so it doesn't blend together. But yeah, very important tip. Common mistake number 4, this is a really big one, and that is just to use blocks that actually look good together. I know it seems very simple as an idea. We have a pretty simple house here. There's not a whole lot going on. Just, you know, a nice rectangle, a bit of shape with a kind of side section here and a smaller roof section that comes out here. But you can see by the block palette, it's mainly deep slate tiles, jungle wood, acacia planks, and magenta wool. Just completely random. And yeah, it just doesn't look great. You could build the coolest shaped house ever with the most interesting details, but if you use blocks and colors that just clash really bad, you're not going to get a house that looks good. So over here, we have just a more toned down version. I replaced the acacia with just some oak, and then I replaced the roof with cyan because cyan is just the goated block, honestly, in this game. But as you can see, just by focusing on one main color instead of 2 heavily clashing colors, we're able to make the exact same house look way better, in my opinion. So yeah, always keep an eye on what color you're using and make sure they don't clash too hard. Build mistake number 5 is something I see a lot of people miss, and honestly, even a lot of people criticize, but I personally like it, and I think it helps a lot, and that is texturing your build. So here we have a very simple brick house with a stone roof, of course, and it's not bad. At this scale, you can kind of get away with not doing the most work with texturing in a build, but as you can see, it looks kind of flat. There's not a whole lot going on. It just looks kind of here, you know what I mean? There's not anything noteworthy about it. But then over here, we have the exact same build, but with a little bit of texturing. I think especially on the roof, it goes a long way to show a bit of weathering. Obviously, it depends on the block palette you're using. For something like brick, I like the way granite looks. If you're using like white wool, then it would be like calcite and like concrete powder. So again, it just heavily depends on the size of the build and what kind of blocks you're using. But I think it makes a huge huge difference like 99% of the time, and you should probably texture your builds because, I mean, I prefer the way the right house looks way more than the left one, but maybe not, maybe you don't. Build tip number 6. In my opinion, this is the biggest deal breaker out of anything that you can miss in a build, and that is just the scale being completely off. Now, I know that might seem like a bit of a like sort of nebulous concept here, not really the best, like most well-defined thing ever, but I'm sure you can tell this looks wrong, right? Like the wall in front of me looks wrong. It's just a large space with no interesting shape, nothing. And I'm not saying you can't build a house with this kind of scale, but I mean, that looks better. You could detail a smaller section more, right? So just by breaking up the shape with maybe some like dormers coming out of a roof, for example, or just some like interesting sections coming out of the side of a wall, you can just add way more shape and like visual interest to a build, especially if you're building a house that's basically a big rectangle and you want to break it up. Just add some parts coming off to the side, smaller sections, break it up a bit. It looks way easier for the eyes to kind of process what you're looking at, you know? It was a block wrong. But yeah, I see so many builds in my Discord and in my like fixing build series that's kind of the biggest problem they have, and it's just that it's one big wall and you really need to just break the wall down to texture it, and I think that's really just one of the biggest takeaways from this video, honestly. Next up, for tip number 7, we have something that's a bit more contentious. I've seen a lot of debate around it in the Minecraft community, and that is the concept of block vomit. Now, I know that this term has been kind of ruined over time. It's way too overused to basically describe texturing, but in my opinion, what block vomit is basically just when you have too many blocks that don't necessarily blend super well together in a small space. Now, some people might look at this wall and just think it's not that bad, right? How many blocks should really be in this, right? But here, I'm gonna grab every block real quick. And there we go, we got the block palette on the ground here. There is a lot of different blocks here. I believe it's 9 blocks. And yeah, you know, some people might see this and think it's fine, but for me, when I look at this, I see too many clashing textures in this wall. For example, we have the brain coral block. The circles in it, a lot of people will see that and just kind of think it's kind of just, it doesn't really blend too well, in my opinion at least. This also has a really harsh border on it, and this is just kind of too dark compared to the rest of the blocks there. So if you build a wall and you think it looks kind of just way too busy, consider like kind of changing the textures a bit and using a smaller block palette. Now, this one uses actually a lot more blocks than you think it would. If I grab them real quick, like we're still using like 7 blocks in this wall, but a lot of them are a bit closer to each other. So we have tough moss and mossy stone brick, just kind of a gradual green sort of like corner here. And it just slowly blends into the lighter stone colors. Now, in my opinion, this looks way better than that wall. Of course, it is a stylistic difference. I think stone is something that you can get away with a bit of block vomit in, but once you start getting to other colors, maybe I'll put an example up on screen, like with orange, if you mix like copper and acacia. I'll do an example of that right now. Like something like this is a lot more block vomity. It's kind of a lot easier to tell what people are kind of complaining about, and I do agree. It's just a very busy kind of surface. That's basically what the point is of this tip is. A very common mistake I see people make, just using too many different blocks. It just looks really busy on the eyes, and it just doesn't blend well. So yeah, very important. By the way, if you're enjoying the video, I'd appreciate it if you subscribed and also join my Discord. We got a lot of cool people in there. There's a build channel where you can send builds and have people kind of review them. Just give some build tips, you know, let them know what you think about the builds, all that stuff. And yeah, I'd really appreciate if you join. I also got a Patreon, by the way, but you know, that's cool too. But yeah, join the Discord, please. Also, everything in this video is kind of my opinion, so if you don't agree with some of these mistakes and you actually like when people do some of this stuff, that's fine. I got nothing wrong with that, you know? But yeah, these are just kind of stuff I see and stuff I get commonly asked about. So yeah, my video, you know? No. Next up, another super common issue I see with a lot of beginner builds, and that is the feeling that they need to have detail everywhere. Not every wall needs to have detail, okay? If you're building a house, especially a house with this sort of small scale, you don't need something going on everywhere, all right? You could see the wall fine. You don't need every single part to have fences, every window to have an overhang, the door to have an overhang. You don't need the flower pots on every single corner. You don't need lanterns on every single corner of the roof. You just don't. A lot of the time, just simplifying it a bit will go a long way. This one is pretty bare bones, admittedly. I might have done a little bit more normally, but just scaling back the detail a bit just kind of lets your eyes just kind of relax when you look at it. You can just kind of see the house itself. You can see the palette better. It's less just confusing and it's a visual mess. Something like this will look really bad in an angle, for example, when this sort of house will look pretty good no matter where you look at it from. So yeah, always just keep an eye out. Ask yourself, do I really need this random trapdoor here? Probably not, you know, and I think it makes a lot of builds look way better without it. Next up for tip number 9, it's kind of a bit more of a survival build tip, but it applies to creative too, as long as you're building not in a super flat basically, and that is to leave the landscape alone, especially in survival. If you find a cool place to build a base, do not flatten the terrain. So right here we have just a house on a completely flat square. I like this house a lot. It's a classic day 60 out of my 100 day series from like a year ago. It's a classic. I really like this house, but it looks just so out of place and boring, and when you put it on like actual landscape and in a biome, it just looks like it fits way better into the space, into the surroundings surroundings. And maybe I'll put some screenshots in like an actual world right here. But when you're actually in a normal Minecraft world and you flatten a whole chunk of the forest to build a house, it looks noticeably out of place. And no matter basically what you build there, it will never actually look good. So in my opinion, I always try to keep as many trees and as much of the landscape around me as possible. I like having the foundation sort of usually be half in the ground, and this kind of just lets it look like it more naturally blends in. Maybe like this house has been here for some time and then nature has kind of reclaimed it a bit, and it just looks way better. So yeah, you don't always have to level where you're building, and I think that's a really important tip that most people forget. Build tip number 10, this is a really important one that I think a lot of people just kind of don't ever think about. I know I didn't think about it for a while, and that is to build an interior. Now, I know you're thinking, I'm building the exterior of the house. Why do I want to build an interior if I just care about the exterior? And you're kind of right, but here is a build I use as an example. Look at this house. You immediately notice that there is no interior in this build. You could see straight inside, you could see straight through it. Kind of just ruins all the immersion and all the like immersive feeling you get when you build a house. You can see straight through it. It looks just kind of terrible, honestly. No floor, nothing going on in there. And then over here, we have the exact same build. Nothing changed on the outside, but all that's different is the interior. They're very simple interiors too if I walk in here. I have a full interior tip video on my channel, by the way. Hopefully there should be a car on screen. I'm gonna forget that, but whole interior tutorial on my channel with all these kind of build tips in it. But just this very simple interior makes even the outside look significantly better, because when you look in, you see like a lived in, furnished, colorful space instead of just this kind of void looking thing. But even one more quick build tip, if you don't actually want to build an interior, I think it looks way better to just commit to not building the interior. And what I mean by that is to basically do this and just black out the windows. You're not meant to see through it. Your imagination just kind of like fills it in as like, oh, I can't see through the windows. And it looks just way better than if you were to just have this void. So yeah, very important build tip. Please do interiors, okay? And finally, build mistake number 11. I know the title says 10. We got 11 right here. Quick bonus one. And that is just to plan your build out. It makes it a lot easier to know what kind of shape you want to go for. Usually the way I do this is I start with just the outline on the ground. So this is, you know, just like there's a tower here. I got a very simple sort of like wall section. And then I make it three-dimensional. I just raise it up, figure out how tall I want the walls to be. And then I look at it. And this is the stage you kind of finalize it. You think, do I like the shape of this house or do I just really not? Do I want a foundation layer? Do I want to make this part taller? Do I want to make this part lower? Do I want to make this part come out more? You know, all that. And when you make this sort of foundation layer, you can actually just see that without having to build the whole house. And it saves a lot of headaches, especially if you're not using World Edit, which I don't think most people do, honestly, like especially beginner builders. So yeah, always plan out a build, because then using this frame that I made over here with wool, I create this house, which I think, I mean, looks pretty good. This is one of my favorites, a classic. But yeah, this sort of frame allows me to know what heights I want to put the blocks at. And it just leads to a more like complete sort of house with a more well thought out shape. And you kind of see it everywhere. You know, I got this back part right here, different roof heights, this tower, all that. And yeah, just planning out can really help you a lot. And oh my God, there's a 12th build tip over here. What would that be? Not subscribing. Is that a common build mistake? I didn't know that. I guess it's a common mistake builders make, is not subscribing to this channel, you know? That's crazy. Oh my God. But yeah, let me know down below if you enjoyed this video. Kind of took a bit of effort to make, you know, all these kind of example builds here. Let me know down below if you actually do any of these build mistakes, and you know, if you're gonna fix them or not, or if you're just gonna keep doing them. You know, you do you. It's Minecraft, sandbox game. You can do whatever you want. But yeah, I appreciate anyone who made it to the end of this video. Let me know down below if you want to see a part 2 or just more build tip videos in general, because I don't make them a whole lot, but this was a lot of fun to put together, and I'm pretty happy with how it came out. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe. As I said earlier, join the Discord. A lot of cool people in there, a lot of interesting people in